Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Flight of ducks unknown, our voice begins to rise, breaking through the noise with fire in its eyes. The spirit of adventure burning ever bright. Hold on tight, travelers, it's gonna be alright. Another week burning, halfway to the end. Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, let the chaos ascend. Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, night is here. Shatter the silence, conquer all your fear. Bonus Overdrive, the agents gonna scream. With Diego at the wheel, living out a dream.
It's time to find out with Diego. Let's go. Ooh, yeah.
On this episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, our guest is a writer, director, and producer who's worked on over 60 screenplays for features, shorts, and documentaries. Currently, he has a horror movie planned to film in Mexico and a love story set to film in Atlanta, all in 2025. He's also made award-winning documentaries and short films which have been seen worldwide. All this plus more. Please welcome first-time guest and new friend to the show, screenwriter, director, professor, and producer, David Greenberg. David, my friend, welcome to Bonus Overdrive Wednesday.
Nice to be here, Diego. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. When our good friend Adam told me about you, and then you sent me your information, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much to cover here, and the number of 60 screenplays pop into my mind. That is an astronomical amount of them, and
it's a lot. Yeah,
it is. And honestly, when I was looking at through all this, I don't know where to begin, but I'm going to take a lash at it and do my best work here. Now, for the listeners who might not be familiar with your work, can you give us a quick overview of your journey as a screenwriter and
Sure. Yeah, I'll try. So I went to film school. I studied at Temple University in Philadelphia. I thought I was just going to be a general filmmaker, a cameraman, sound guy, editor. And I quickly learned that I'm really not that good at that stuff with cameras. I'm a terrible editor. But I'd always been a writer. Even since I was a little kid, I was writing school plays and things like that in grade school. And I eventually decided to focus on screenwriting. So it was 9 years after college before I got a paid screenwriting job. And I use the term paid loosely. I joke and I call myself the minimum wage screenwriter, but that's actually pretty accurate. So I got a job 9 years after college, and then it was another 9 years before I got another job. And then they started coming pretty fast and furious. Again, really, really rinky-dinky stuff, didn't pay well. And most of the times the films don't get made, but it's sort of, I don't know, a nice pat on the back to know that people think I'm a good enough writer that they'll trust me with their stories and hire me to write it.
And how was the experience in film school? Because I try to liken it to certain things. So, like, let's say not necessarily the same thing. So somebody who joins the military, right? They think they're going to go in there for a certain specialty. They wind up going through boot camp. They wind up going through or officer school or anything like that.
Right.
What they thought they were going to be doing, it was something completely different.
Yeah, it was kind of like that for me. I mean, I didn't know. I didn't even know there was such a thing as film school. A girl who lived next door to me was a year ahead of me in school, and she was graduating. I said, "Oh, so what are you doing next year?" And she said, "I'm going to college for film." I was like, "What? You can go to college and study film?" I was like, "Sign me up." So that's what I did. And honestly, to tell the truth, I don't remember a whole lot from college. I'm glad I went, but I'm not sure how much I learned there. And now it's strange too, because now I am a film professor and I'm teaching people, and I'm hoping that, 30 years after they graduate from college, they're like, oh, I sure learned a lot from Professor Greenberg.
It's funny you mentioned that. I went to a school back in 2004, which was mostly for broadcast television. They show you how to make commercials, how to do
Yeah.
copywriting,
Sure.
edit video, from sports to news and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from there. I didn't even start this journey until 2020, once
Yeah.
COVID hit. And then you might be able to relate because you're a very creative person. When you're someone who has a lot of ideas, you like to create things.
Sure.
There's a time to where, and I think as unfortunate as the whole COVID thing was, it kind of launched 1,000 ships in a way.
Yeah.
So I don't know
agreed.
if you had that same experience or not.
Not specifically, but I watch this. I watch the film world the way some people watch the stock market and watch sports. I'm always trying to spot the trends and see what's going on. And yeah, there were a lot of pandemic movies and a lot of people. It's interesting because I come from the really, really low budget, kind of grungy indie film school of filmmaking, and the pandemic really forced people to embark on smaller scale projects. So there's a lot of those coming out, and some of them are very, very interesting, some of them less so.
And in the low budget universe, I've always been a fan of those types of movies.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I
Mhm.
think some of them, at least, I don't know, maybe before the 70s, some of them like 50s, 60s, a lot of them wound up in drive-in movies. That's the only
Yeah.
place you can see some of them.
Sure.
Every once in a while, you'll see it in a movie theater, but it would be one of those movie theaters where like a $3 movie theater. They didn't
Exactly.
play the greats, but they play some great stuff, which I saw a lot of monster movies, which is my thing.
Me too. I grew up in those movies. In those movies, I was telling my students the other day that when I was growing up, when I was a teenager in Philadelphia, in the center of the city, in the big downtown section, there were probably 20 movie theaters, and every Saturday I was down there watching some schlocky, cheesy horror movie or slasher movie. That's not the way it is now. There's like one or two movie theaters in the center of the city. But there's so many new ways to watch movies with streaming and things, and you have to be on the lookout for hidden gems.
And there are, in fact, you ever heard of something called the Mandela effect?
Yeah, sure.
I thought I was going through something like that where I swore I saw a movie back in the early 80s about it. It was called The Being. Nobody's ever heard of this movie. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Typical stuff, monster and kills people in the towns,
Mhm.
stuff I like to watch.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 3 months ago I thought I was crazy. It showed up on Prime.
Oh, wow.
And it was so bad it was good.
Yeah, sure.
But I loved everything about it.
Mhm.
So the reason I bring that up, we talk about independent movies. The future of filmmaking, I think it's kind of changing, or has changed, where there are more tools available for the independent movie maker.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing a lot of sorts of fresh and new ideas, or some recycled stories told differently.
Sure.
How does, in your opinion, how does that change the filmmaking universe? Because now it's the powerhouse companies no longer have all the power, because now you see all these.
Well, it's a really interesting thing, and I don't know if this came up in the material I sent over to you, but I actually wrote a book. I have a book out called Screenwriting for Micro Budget Films, and it's all about these cheap films. And as a matter of fact, well, I guess this is going to be out after the fact, but this week in Philadelphia, where I'm based, is something called the Philadelphia Unnamed Film Festival, which is kind of a gathering of all these people who are making these low budget, weird horror movies and things. And they exist really, really beneath the surface. And to me, it's kind of like the folk musicians of the 20s and the 60s, but also kind of like the punk rock musicians of the 70s and the 80s, where you just went around from town to town, you did your show and you sold your tapes. And it's kind of like that with movies. You kind of make these little movies for, I mean, sometimes less than $500, usually very often less than $10,000, $20,000. And you just get them out there. And it's really about doing it for the love of the medium. You know, nobody's going to get rich. You know, you don't want to lose money. In a best case scenario, you break even, and that rarely happens. But I'm finding a lot of really interesting, daring, kind of groundbreaking, interesting films are happening at that level. And it's exciting to me.
It is exciting. In fact, here in West Virginia, there's at least 3 filmmaking companies right now, and they're putting out a lot of really good stuff. And I think just the local town had their own little film festival. And it's one of those things where I think it's great to have these film festivals because it does a lot for the local businesses, and it brings a lot of shine to a local town, which some people may never have heard of.
True. There's that too, but for me, from my perspective, and you know, I do like it on that level. In February, I'm doing a workshop at a festival way out in the middle of nowhere in sort of north central Pennsylvania. And, you know, all these filmmakers are going to be descending upon this tiny little town, Wellsboro, PA, for this film festival. And I love that. But for me, it's getting to meet other filmmakers. And so I'm actually hosting a filmmakers meetup at this film festival here in Philly on Wednesday, where, you know, I feel it's my job to put people together. That's one of the things I love the most. There was, we have a thing here, the Set in Philadelphia screenplay competition. And, you know, they announced the winners a few months ago, and I saw the winners, and these 2 women shared the prize for one of the categories. I mean, the category was children's films or anything. And I saw they won it, and I introduced them. I was at a workshop, and I was talking to this one woman, and she told me the kind of stuff she's writing. I was talking to this other woman. She was telling me the kind of stuff she was writing. I said, hey, you know what? You guys should meet each other. So I put them together, and now they win an award with the script they work. So I love networking and putting people together like that and seeing that kind of thing happen.
Yes, it's similar with podcasting. Is sometimes we get together, have conversations, and say, "Hey, have you ever had this guest on?" And you just help them connect the dots with everybody.
Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah, and before I forget, I'm going to check out the film festivals you mentioned in West Virginia. Or you said there are film festivals, but there's actually film production companies?
Yes, sir. And
Okay.
a lot of them, you know, got a lot of heart, and they do great stuff. It's actually, of course, it's
Okay.
entertaining, but it's you just don't know, and it's a lovely thing
Yeah.
because sometimes you just get tired of watching the same stuff.
Exactly. You know, I watched Superman last night, and it was okay. But I'm so much more interested in seeing, you know, a grungy, low budget film made by people I've never heard of, starring people I've never heard of. And I see enough of these that I'm beginning to see their other films like, oh, this little guy nobody's ever heard of has a new film out. And I'm really excited about it. And you like to turn people on to films too. And I've done that too. Oh, you have to check out this amazing film with nobody in it and all that stuff. And when somebody loves it, you just feel good.
You know, sometimes some of these performers and actors in we call low budget films, sometimes they kind of start trending, and then you start seeing them on like the everyday television show, or you might see them in a commercial.
Right. No, sometimes this woman, I guess earlier this year on the HBO show, The White Lotus, one of the breakout stars was Parker Posey, who's been around for 35, maybe 30, since the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, doing little indie films. And, you know, her profile rose a little bit in the 90s. Like I think she was in Scream 3 or 4, but she just did all these little kooky indie films, and eventually, it led to more high profile stuff. But I like the stuff that flies under the radar.
Yeah, me too. In fact, I'll bring one for instance, and I'm dating myself on this one.
Okay.
And for those that, if you're ever fans of the Full Moon production movies, I think they were in
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I remember those.
in the 90s. There was this cat named Tim Thomerson,
Yeah.
and he was Doll Man.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
was
Sure.
also in Demonic Toys versus Doll Man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with that, and I'm was, always will be, a big Golden Girls fan. And I saw him do a small part, which was hilarious, in Golden Girls. He showed up at the front door. He was a date for Blanche, and of course, hilarity ensues. I was like, "That's Tim Thomerson. He was in Doll Man." People got tired of me saying that. Go see Doll Man. So it kind of, I don't know, it kind of brings a certain satisfaction to see somebody's career grow along the way, I guess.
Yeah. It's nice when you see somebody make it, and although sometimes I worry, I hope that their head doesn't get too big, and they keep making interesting films. Well, the guy Ty West, who most recently did the Pearl and X trilogy, and I forget what the other one was. He did those 3 films. I've been watching his career from the beginning. He did House of the Devil, which I really loved, which was a low budget indie film, and then he did The Innkeepers, and I'm very, very, very much into that kind of stuff.
In talking about people getting a big hit, the internet is a very humbling place, so act accordingly, because then don't give anybody any more reason not to like you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Now, I try not to say anything bad about anybody.
No, I do the same thing. It's not even worth it, because whatever you give, you get back, and it's going to come back on you eventually.
Right.
So, well,
exactly.
Let's talk about some of your projects you have coming up, or probably by this time already have been released. So you had a movie planned, a horror movie in Mexico, and then jump into a love story in Atlanta.
Yeah, no, it's a strange thing. I don't hear, once I make the deal and I sell the script and hopefully I actually get paid, I never hear. So last November, I sold a script to a guy who said, "Great, we're going to shoot it in Mexico, summer 2025." And I check in here and there, and as far as I can tell, he did not shoot it this summer. I think there was some delay. He's paid me some of the money for it, but I don't know what's happening with it. Similarly, the rom-com that was supposed to shoot in Atlanta was supposed to be directed by this guy. I had a film produced in Belize back in December, and now I hear he's doing another film. He's shooting another film that's not my rom-com. So I have no idea what's happening with that.
So the one in Belize, that was The Haunting of San Ignacio, right?
Correct. Yes.
And
I haven't seen any of it. I've seen pictures from the production. I didn't go down for the shoot, but I know it's in post-production, but I haven't heard anything about when it's coming out or anything. It's always very nerve-wracking to me, because you come up with an idea, you write a script, you hand it to somebody, but then you're just never sure how much of your original script is going to wind up on screen. That happened to me once before. One of the first screenwriting jobs I got, this is back in 2007. I wrote the script. I turned it in. The day before they started shooting, I called the producer, said, "Hey, good luck. Let me know how it goes." They shoot it, and it's still a couple years later before I actually saw the film. So they sent me a DVD. I put it on. I'm like, who is this character? Where is this scene? I didn't, they had changed so much from my original script that I barely recognized the movie. So that's what you don't want to see happen sometimes. But at the same time, I've been the guy who has changed somebody else's script, which I guess we can get into in a little bit. I mean, one of my big jobs is often rewriting other people's scripts.
And that makes sense what you're saying, because if you're a nerd like me, 100% nerd,
Yeah, me too.
every once in a while you go see one of these, I'm going to call them superhero movies, and you've read the comics and you've read the graphic novels, you know the history. You go in there, you sit, and I'm always set up for disappointment, and I'm always right. Like, but this is not how it goes.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I was a little surprised when I saw the new Superman last night, and he had those. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen the new Superman? Okay. Well, I'm not spoiling it, but up in the Fortress of Solitude, he has these like 4 robots helping him. I'm like, that was never in the comics. He never had anyone in the Fortress of Solitude with him. So that was a bold choice. I'm not 100% against it, but it was a real surprise.
Yeah, that might be where they, like in music, a deep cut, where it might have been mentioned many years ago.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Right.
And well, this is one of the things where I think if I were a screenwriter, I write little things here and there, but nothing to that magnitude. I would be terrified, because I know, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, where you probably shop around a script, these these scripts, and you send them to different locations, right? It's different people. I would be terrified if I send something to somebody, they say, no, we're not going to work on it, and then they wind up ripping it off anyway. Does that happen?
Well, it does happen. I'm shaking in my shoes right now, because a few months ago, a producer connected me with a director who's looking for a film. He said, hey, this guy has screenplays, this guy's looking. So I sent him maybe 4 or 5 different synopsises of my screenplays. I gave him the logline and the synopsis, haven't heard back. And the fact is, he could just take my synopsis and put it into AI and generate a whole screenplay.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, it's a real possibility in this world now, and I would be really unhappy about that. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Oh, that AI is a game changer. I mean, I've seen some positive, but that I can understand how people would be very concerned with just that being the only thing that does the work.
Yeah, it's tough. I have a complicated relationship with AI. I think to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist and do the old ways is kind of an outdated way of thinking. But similarly, just thinking, oh, all I have to do is have AI write the screenplay is also not good. So my personal stance on it is I won't have AI write a screenplay for me, but I will have AI write a screenplay with me. And the way I use it sort of feels like I'm sitting face to face with another writer working on things. So I've reconciled a way to use AI, and it's not perfect. It makes a lot of mistakes. You really have to watch it so that the script doesn't go sideways. So, I have a script where I can look at it and I can say, well, this line is 100% AI, this line is 100% me, and this line is a hybrid. It's part AI, part me. And I'm okay with that.
I reckon because if the story flows and it's in the spirit of what you originally intended it to be, it should be fine.
Yeah, I know that I'm coming up with the story. I'm coming up with the characters. I know what they want them to do. And the AI just kind of helps me with it. It doesn't do anything I didn't tell it to do.
Right. It's kind of like having superpowers. You could use it for good, or you can use it for nefarious reasons, right?
Exactly. That's a really good way of putting it. So, yeah.
So, with now talking about your 60 screenplays, what are you currently working on now that's actually, I'm going to say, in production, and you're actually able to keep an eye on these people, say, yeah, they're working on this? And
okay, that's a good question. In terms of actually in production, I don't think I have anything in production now. Like I said, there was supposed to be this horror movie shot in Mexico over the summer. It doesn't sound like that's happening. I'm actually really busy right now doing a lot of different stuff. So I have a couple scripts that I'm working on now. One for a friend in LA, although he says it's on the back burner because he's focused on another project. But he asked me to write something, and I wrote that, and he'll add that to his slate of projects he's trying to get made. He already has another one of my scripts that he wants to get made, and he has another one that he wants me to write. So those are going on. Interestingly, I'll touch on this because, like I said, I've written 65 screenplays. Now, the vast bulk of the time, I'm a writer for hire. Somebody comes to me and they say, hey, Dave, we want a screenplay about XYZ, and I write that. So I very, very rarely write an original screenplay that comes directly from an idea I had. And so for about the first time in 15 years or so, I did that this summer. I wrote a completely original, from the heart, personal screenplay. And I'm very happy with that. I need to do a couple more drafts of it. But then I'm going to start showing it around and trying to raise money for it. And I would like to produce that.
You kind of almost read my mind with raising money for films or anything like that. Documentaries, shorts, or whatever it is that you're going to be working on. There are several websites out there with like Kickstarters or Indiegogo,
right?
Things like that. And I know depending on what type or what company's doing the movies, there's financial backers, there's people there's sponsorships, there's product placements that can get kind of messy. So for, let's say, a film at this level coming up, how does one do a fundraising?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I did a fundraiser. I did a GoFundMe or Kickstarter for my first feature in 2013 called Stomping Ground. And between you and me and all your listeners, it wasn't successful. I was looking for $12,000. I raised $7,000 on it. And rather than, because I didn't want the stigma of having a failed crowdfunding campaign, just because in certain circles, especially in my region, I'm pretty well known. People know who I am. And, honestly, for me to have an unsuccessful crowdfunding campaign would have looked good. It would have damaged my reputation. So one of the other producers and I came up with the final $5,000, and we put it in to say that we had made our goal. I did sneaky things too. I'm not above working the internet. So the day before the campaign ended, I tweeted and I posted on my Facebook, "Thank you, Kevin Smith, and thank you, Edward Burns," two real giants of micro budget, low budget indie filmmaking. I didn't say that they contributed to my crowdfunding campaign, but I knew people would just assume that they did. And I got a whole big wave of submissions that night just because I made people think Kevin Smith and Edward Burns donated to my my crowdfunding campaign.
But that's genius strategy. I mean, it's marketing, it's promotion. Yeah.
I'm all for it. I'll wait to see if anybody else steals that from me. But so it sort of works. So I don't have a lot. Honestly, I don't know that people are having as much success with crowdfunding these days anymore. Like I said, it's been since 2013 since I last had a crowdfunding campaign, and I'm hesitant to do it with this next project that I'd like to do next year because I kind of feel like I've shaken that tree before. Anybody and everybody who was inclined to donate to that first project probably did donate to that first project, which, honestly never really went anywhere. It came out, it got released, it got distributed, but, it didn't make its money back. I'll be completely upfront and honest about that. So from a financial point of view, my track record as a writer, producer, director is a little bit spotty because, my one feature that I wrote, directed, and produced did not make money, did not turn a profit. So I'm not sure, if it was me seeing somebody else's crowdfunding campaign, I would have to think twice about whether I want to contribute to that campaign.
But that's the risk anybody takes. And I'm not trying to sound disrespectful or anything like that. Look at it like this. If you were a boxer, you're not going to win every match. Every once in a while,
Yeah.
you're going to get KO'd or you're going to lose by points. But down the road, you might produce something that can generate its money back plus more, which can help fund another one by another film.
Right. So I said all that. I will probably do a crowdfunding campaign next year and see what I can do with this.
And with your next project that's coming in the works, what do you see yourself doing in that project? And what I mean by that is what kind of what are we going to get? Because I know you have a lot of different flavors of what you make.
It's true. It's really crazy, and it could really be all over the place. I am really interested, I don't know why, but really interested in dabbling in the world of vertical filmmaking. I don't know if you're familiar with verticals at all. These are essentially really cheesy soap operas that are designed to be watched on your phone. The episodes are all about a minute each. And you get a feature's length of material just in 1 minute segments. It's really taking over Hollywood. They're generally low budget, generally pretty cheesy, but the quality is beginning to go up and people are starting to break out of the established molds and do interesting things with them. So I have a group together that wants to do that. I'm really stretched thin between teaching and, giving workshops at film festivals and things like that. So I have not been able to pay too much attention, but we have a full script for that. We're going to try that and see if we can do that. There's the script I was telling you about, that the personal screenplay. And I would like to direct that next year. And whatever else comes along. Mostly I'm just writing scripts for other people though.
Wow, and as you're telling me that, let's talk about these 1 minute showings, right?
Yeah.
There has to be a certain, I'm not going to use the word stress, but you have to put a lot in such short amount of time that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a real prescribed model for them. They have to open with a hook, something eye-catching, and then they have to end on a cliffhanger. And of all things, since it's a pretty new thing, but way, way, way back in 2006, I was hired by an Asian company to write one. They never went through with it, but they said, yeah, this is a story designed to be watched on mobile, on tablets and cell phones and things like that. So I'm very adept at writing for short films. So I know how to hook an audience and I know how to keep them captivated and wanting to see the next episode. So to me, it's a fun writing exercise.
So there's a bit of a formula to what you're doing.
Oh, very much so.
Which leads me to this question, because I could watch a movie and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But I'm going to say to the rest of the world, sometimes it doesn't catch fire.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, because you've been in this industry for so long, what is it that people might be missing the point of some of these movies that are good, or what helps a movie trend to eventually where people say and look and say, you know what, this is really good?
Well, first I want to go back a little bit, take a step back too. My feeling is there's a lot of pressure. I think a lot of people feel pressure to like movies that are getting acclaimed, whether they like them or not. So I feel like you should stick to your guns. And if you didn't like something, say, hey, it didn't work for me. I didn't like it. And this is why. And conversely, you might like a movie that nobody liked. And, I think that people shouldn't feel pressure to like or dislike something based on what other people are saying. Now, on the other hand, there are certain things that will touch universal themes. I think the film, it got generally good reviews. I'd say maybe 75% good reviews over the summer was Weapons. I don't know if you saw that.
No, but I've heard a lot of good things about it.
Good, yeah, it is good, but there are people who hated it too. So what I always say is, I guarantee that you could tell me what your favorite movie of all time is right now, and we could find somebody who hates it, and someone could tell you their favorite movie of all time, and you might hate it.
Yeah,
I don't think there's very, very few films that I find are universally loved. Okay, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody who didn't like Jaws.
Oh no, absolutely.
No.
Yeah, Jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pun intended. It's a monster movie. But when you said about you name a favorite movie and people will pick it apart, I got two. They're equal by the same filmmaker. They Live and Escape from New York. I can't get enough of those two.
Wait, did John Carpenter, did They Live?
Yes.
I didn't realize that. Sure. No, those are great. Hey, no, those are great. Those are great. Did John Carpenter also do Big Trouble in Little China?
Oh gosh,
I think he might have. No, John Carpenter's legit. I mean, his later films might have slacked off a little bit, but yeah, no, John Carpenter did Christine too, I think.
He also
Stephen King thing.
Yeah, he does his own music too.
Yeah, he does his own music too. Yeah, no, John Carpenter. Yeah, They Live was cool. I like that. And Escape, of course, Escape from New York.
Yeah, and just to tell the fans out there, I'll watch anything with Kurt Russell.
Yeah, Kurt Russell is the man. He's great. Yeah.
So now, with the years of experience that you have in this industry, and I'm gonna say you know how to pick a winner. Throw that out there. We can try. What are some of the new and up and coming filmmakers, screenwriters for us to keep an eye on?
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I mean, obviously Zach Cregger, who did Barbarian and Weapons, is pretty hot. He's pretty red hot. It's really funny because he cites. So this gets a little delicate, but I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bad Ben series. There's a series of found footage paranormal activity movies called Bad Ben. There's like 14 of them, and they have a huge rabid following. And I am, in fact, I'm one of the stars of Bad Ben 3. Long story short, Zach Cregger, who directed Barbarian and Weapons, cites Bad Ben as one of his biggest influences on Barbarian. I've had a falling out with the writer-director of that. It's a long story. We used to be friends. We're not friends anymore. But Zach Cregger, my point is, Zach Cregger did that. There's a film out maybe 2023. Actually, I think I saw it in 2023. It might have come out in 2021. One of the weirdest non-horror but horrifying movies I've ever seen, called Soft and Quiet. And it's a low-budget film. It's also all done in one shot. And the less I say about it, the better. It's about a group of women going out for coffee. And it turns into one of the most profoundly disturbing films I've ever seen. And I was sitting there watching it, saying to the screen, please don't. They're not going to do this. That would be too far. They can't do this. And they do it. And yeah, it was pretty intense. So that was written and directed by a woman. And I look up the movie because I actually can't pronounce her last name. And so I don't want to mangle it. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does next. There's the movie... we're all going to the world. Everyone's going to the World's Fair. And I saw the TV Glow by director Jane Schoenbrunn. And I'm really, really curious to see their next film because it's about a woman directing a reboot of an 80s horror movie series. and she becomes obsessed with the actress who played the final girl. And so it's a horror movie about horror movies, which is kind of cool. And just as of this week, I did some tweaking. We're trying to turn up the heat on a script that I wrote years ago, but it's also kind of a psychological thriller set during the production of a low budget horror movie. And we're trying to get some name talent attached to that.
Excellent. See, you always got something cooking, my friend.
I really do. I really do. This is like all I can do. You know, I'm 6 years old. I'm still waiting for my big break.
I understand.
Yeah.
We'll talk offline as to some of the stuff I've done, waiting for my break too. Well, because when someone's taking your course or your class, you're a professor.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And how long is that class?
Currently I'm currently at Drexel University in Philadelphia. I've been there 21 years, but I've taught other places where the classes are 15 weeks. My classes at Drexel are, for now, they're 10 weeks. I think they're going to 15 weeks next year in 2027. Fall of 2027, they go to 15 weeks. But right now, it's 10 3-hour classes.
And in those classes, I know we pretty much guess what you are teaching, but is there a part in that class, maybe it's something that you can teach us right now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, some of the more important piece of advice you would give somebody who's trying to break into the industry, kind of like maybe like a survival guide or what to look out for?
Okay, yeah. Well, in terms of screenwriting, so primarily what I teach is screenwriting. And I feel like the screenplay is the essential ingredient in a film. If you don't have a good screenplay, it's pretty hard to have a good film. You can take a good screenplay and make a bad film out of it, but you can't make a good film out of a bad screenplay. So one of my favorite pieces of advice for screenwriting is the audience, the main character has to, the main character has to want something, and the audience has to know what it is, has to know what the main character is trying to do. Most movies are about a character trying to do something. In School of Rock, one of my favorite movies, Jack Black wants to win Battle of the Bands because he wants to be a rock star. And he winds up not winning Battle of the Bands and not being a rock star, but he gets something more important instead. He finds a way to become a mature, productive adult who can now pay the bills, which is, the opposite of what he was at the beginning of the movie. So that's one way to think of it. Think of your character, think of your film as a weight loss ad or a before and after ad. At the first time we see your character, they're overweight. The last time we see the character, they're buff. Stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty simple stuff.
Yes, and with your book, Screenwriting for Low Budget Films, is that still available?
Yeah, I think it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. And in this era, you can make a film on your cell phone, on your smartphone, and a lot of people are. But just because it's making a film for little money is a little bit more complicated than just not spending that much money. You have to know you have to approach a low budget film the right way. You have to know that you're very unlikely to be able to do elaborate special effects or action sequences. You're really mostly going to be doing films about 2 to 4 characters in 2 to 4 locations. No special effects. Although that's changed now, people are managing to do some good special effects on low budgets, but you really have to know what you're doing. It's one of the biggest problems I see is people trying to emulate big budget films on low budgets, and it usually winds up coming off cheesy. Like, I mean, I hate to put it like this. Well, I remember years ago, I was reviewing films for a trade magazine, and I saw one of these things, and it was like a mob movie. And anytime somebody would fire a gun, you'd have this little Adobe After Effects little muzzle flash, and it looked really cheesy. It just didn't work. So my feeling is, if you cannot afford to do gunfire effects convincingly, you should not write a film where people shoot guns. I saw this other film, another crime film, where the bad guys were throwing a guy off a roof, and they drag him to the edge of the roof, and then it's a cut to a scene of him on the ground. Now, audiences are sophisticated today. If somebody's getting thrown off a roof, they want to see a body going off a roof. And to do anything less is kind of cheesy and cheating the audience. So work within your parameters, know what you can and can't do. Don't try to make Star Wars on, a TikTok budget.
No, you're absolutely right. And I don't want to name the name of this movie making company. In fact, I think I've forgotten it. But they would do something similar. They used to call these mockbuster movies, where
I know what you mean.
Where, let's say, if somebody makes a high budget Godzilla movie, you'll see Bobzilla.
Right,
If
exactly.
Battleship is Battleship in the Sea.
I would see those things. You know what? You don't really see DVDs quite as much anymore. The DVD market has dried up, which is a whole other thing. But I can remember being in a general store in Maine, like a truck stop, and they had these racks of DVDs with all these movies with no stars, nobody in the cast or crew that I've ever heard of, and they're really generally pretty cheesy action movies. And I realize there's this whole industry out there that's just so sub Hollywood, so sub mainstream. And I guess these are things that people just pop onto a DVD player and watch kind of mindlessly. And the cover looks good, so they buy it. So, but hey, if somebody offered me a job writing one of those, I would do it in a second.
No, I don't believe you. I would do the same thing. And to their defense, there's a market for it, and they have a lot of fans, and they like watching those movies.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm just saying it's along the lines of trying to do a high budget on a TikTok budget. So I get what you're saying on that one.
Yeah.
So now, with 2025 is closing up, and 2026 is coming up. I can't believe how fast this year went, my friend.
Oh, yeah, really fast.
For those that want to know more about your projects, where to get a copy of course, your book that came out about in 2021, and where you're going to be next, where can they go find out?
Sure. I have a website. It's davidjgreenberg.com. That's my name. There's a lot of David Greenbergs out there, so I have to go by my middle initial professionally. So David J. Greenberg. That's GREENBERG.com. And there should be regular updates. I do have a film coming out, I think, in October. And this was a film that I just produced. I'm not the director and I'm not the writer, which was an unusual role for me. And I thought that might be interesting to talk about in a number of ways, too, because a friend of mine who has directed a few films hit me up and he said, "Hey, Dave, would you read this script? I'm thinking about directing it. Tell me what you think of it," which happens all the time. And so I read it, and I thought it was a really good script. And I said, "I'll do whatever I can to help you get this film made." And he said, "Great, what do you want to do?" Well, I'm normally a writer, and it didn't need to be written. And I sometimes direct, and it didn't need to be directed because he was directing it. So I said, "I don't know, produce." And he said, "Great, you're the producer." I agreed to be the producer on this film, even though I knew I was not a good producer. I'd never produced before. I didn't want to produce. And the first thing I did was hire a better producer. And we shot that film for about $30,000 in about 10 days up in the Poconos. We rented a house, huge house. Well, we got a house. We got a deep discount on this house. And so the entire cast and crew lived in this house and shot in this house for about 2 weeks. And that was a really interesting case in which we had the original writer do 8 drafts of it, and we still weren't 100% happy. So the director asked me to do a draft of it and asked the other producer to do a draft of it. We went with the other producer's draft of it. But it was supposed to be a straight up horror movie. And something really strange happened during production in that the chemistry between the male and female leads was so strong that we actually started emphasizing the more romantic elements of the story, to the point that, I mean, yeah, there's still dead bodies and there's jump scares and there's blood and stuff, but mostly it's a love story, which we never intended to make. And I'll be really curious to see how audiences respond to that. But that was a case too where, as producer, I had to do everything. I had to help cast the movie, help find the crew. It was everything from, finding the cinematographer to cleaning toilets and doing laundry, which is literally true. I had to clean toilets and do laundry one day. But one day we were coming down towards the end of the shoot, and the director said to me and the other producer, "Hey, can you guys write a new ending?" He just decided he didn't like the ending. And so the day before we were supposed to finish shooting, we had to come up with a new ending. And that's really not that uncommon. I hear the new Avengers movie is being shot in Bulgaria right now, and they've never had a finished script. They're still working on the script.
Wow. And you want to talk about putting a lot in a movie with all those characters. I don't know how they keep it all together, but God bless them to do a great job.
Right.
So,
and that movie's got to be $400 million too.
Oh yeah, easily. So now, well, I'll tell you what, my friend, I'd like to bring you back in 2026 because I know you have a lot of things coming out then. I want to talk about it, and then, maybe we could bring some of the people that worked on the project with you, and it would just
that'd be cool. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, this is fun. I would absolutely love to come back and do it again.
I really appreciate you being on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, my friend.
All content on this broadcast is a property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. The information shared on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.